So welcome to our meeting for the OpenStudyBuilder as Metadata Repository collaboration. We figured out that there's a high need to utilize the OpenStudyBuilder also as a pure metadata repository. So just focusing for this part now, and for this we are doing now this combined and shared meeting to provide you some additional information about the vision, the status, focusing on the metadata repository aspects, and also will show you different collaboration options we can go on. First, I'm going to start with a disclaimer. So the concrete roadmap and plans are always underlying the continuous update of Novo Nordisk's priorities, because as you know, as requirements change, the plans will adopt as needed. Nevertheless, today we are covering the scope and the status, deliverables, the environment, then we will focus on the metadata repository, and we'll finish with collaborations and open source. So how we can do the collaboration, and here we also would like to have a very open discussion and contribution from your end, which will just enable this collaboration project. So we are going to start with the scope and the status. You might have heard already that the OpenStudyBuilder is an outcome of the CDISC 360-degree project, and it's also very linked to the Transliterate Digital Data Flow project. So it's all in the same scope, and the vision really is that we can automate the end-to-end processes or start-to-end processes through metadata. So having it a lot metadata collected, metadata driven, so that we can streamline all the processes. When you check the functionality, so the OpenStudyBuilder is a set of a data repository, which is metadata and also study definitions. It contains industry standards, sponsor standards, and also study definitions. It comes along with a lot of tools. So we do have a very detailed web interface where you can do all the processings you need to do. And it's also coming along with a lot of scripts. So if you want to load the latest CDISC control terminology, there's a script available, and there's also script for many other things. And the main importance is that we are having APIs, and these APIs are interfaces, and these are really open, and really everything you do in the database is going through these APIs, meaning whatever tool we have in the OpenStudyBuilder universe, the same task you can automate through other scripts. It's also meant to have EDC systems in connection to our OpenStudyBuilder, so that it's connecting. Also the computing environment, it should connect. Okay, so to have an overview introduction is we really have the OpenStudyBuilder universe where we really have the metadata and the study data, so the general definitions and standards, and we utilize them still through our own systems, which could be different EDC systems, computing environments, any other tools like ePro. And it's also meant to have the clinical data outside of the OpenStudyBuilder universe. So it's all connected through the metadata, but it's still located outside. So if you look into the OpenStudyBuilder, how does it look like? We are going to start with a study vision. We can manage our studies, meaning we load, create, and have also version control of our studies. We define the studies, meaning which attributes, epochs, interventions, objectives. Very important are the activities. Then we need to define the data specification, which is kind of an operational schedule of activity. So how do you concretely plan to collect your param CD, for example? So the EDC specifications are also just metadata, which is within the OpenStudyBuilder. And it's also meant to have the standard forms and also custom fields in the OpenStudyBuilder. This will enable, when doing the actual EDC collection from the EDC systems, we can still, as we are maintaining the standards in the OpenStudyBuilder, we can connect EDC System 1 or EDC System 2 or EDC System 3, and they all can work with the same standards, which is provided by the OpenStudyBuilder. The next thing is also that we want to view the specifications, so we can generate the protocol content, we can generate the trial domains, we can generate the standards plan, the ODM XML, and also the CRF and the define XML. This is partially work in progress, so this is currently not in, but this is really where we are having the next steps, what we are going to implement. So this is what we have as study specifications, and the side product is also the structured content of the protocol and the protocol outline. So going from the study specifications, what we do have is we can have the structured protocol, we can perform the CRF design, we can perform the EDC data collection. And as Novo Nordisk is going process-wise from front to end, this is so the structured protocol, we already have covered many items like the syntax template, the schedule of activities. The CRF design, we also have proof of concept available, but a lot of work is still going on in this direction. The EDC connection is the next step on our agenda, where we are also going to have a workshop at the CDISC Interchange in April. And then the following processes, which is, for example, the SDTM mapping, ADAM mapping, and the final TLF generation, this is really located in the future. For SDTM, we might today already have someone from the OAK team in here. So the idea is really that we can also store the OAK metadata within our repository. But this is really not currently work in progress, at least not by Novo Nordisk, but this is something which really could come by the community, so by you. When we are looking at the structured protocol, we do have the title elements, schedule of activities, objective endpoints, study design, population interventions, study activities. So this is all going into the protocol. We are also planning to have a protocol word add-in available as open source solution. This is coming hopefully this year. I'm expecting this year, but we had some delays. So for the protocol, how does it look like? We do have the information in our OpenStudyBuilder, and then we can utilize through these APIs we have a Word add-in, and you can say just load all my data into my protocol or update all my data in the protocol, because sometimes you're also doing updates during protocol development, of course. When we're looking process-wise, so also the digital data flow really aims for parallelization so that you really can develop parallel to the protocol, for example, on the CRF EDC and so on. So this is also a game of the automation, so having higher productivity. The protocol is something which is working pretty well in the OpenStudyBuilder. The CRF is partly working, so this is still a draft available, but we do work here actively on. The EDC is also work in progress. When it comes to SDTM, the connection to the statistical computing environment, or also ADAM, or even the TLF generation, this is really in the future part, which is not on this year's scope. If we want to view at the outputs from the deliverables, so what do we have on our road? We will start with a protocol. There's now a new M11 guideline. There's a schedule of activities, then comes CRF design, EDC setup, statistical analysis plan, SDTM, ADAM, and finally TLFs. We all have it on our road. We have it in our minds. There's also connected things like trial budget planning or patient burden planning, risk assessments, monitoring, and so on. This is all connected, and this could all be done with the metadata we collect in OpenStudyBuilder. But then where we are and where do we want to go? We are at the beginning of the road. So as mentioned, protocol schedule of activities is pretty stable, pretty far from development. Then CRF design and EDC setup is work in progress. Trial domains are also an outcome of the protocol, so that's also pretty far. But then when you look into the other areas, which is the SDTM specifications, the define XML, this is not so mature and really not on our near roadmap. So what do we have? We have the protocol information. We are planning to have the M11 export. So this is a new standard for the protocol. We do have the schedule of activities managed for multiple use cases. So for the protocol, for the visit and test planning, for the data capture. We do have the CRF design on the library level. So the CRF design on study level is work in progress. We already can export an ODM XML, which is not complete, but we already have a first version. And we also have an annotated CRF. The EDC support is work in progress. Trial domains are just an outcome we already have. So the protocol content is already available. If you're looking for concrete SDTM or ADAM specifications, this is partially work in progress. We do have some map specifications according to the CDIS implementation guides, for example, but it's not the full SDTM specifications like what you have in your metadata repository if you have one. Just a very brief look into the environment itself. The core is really the metadata repository, so the database. And we do have here, everything is connected through this interface, so which is the API. And we also have for the Transliterate project, the DDF API adapter. And here everything is connected. So you do have import and export scripts, whether it's industry standards, sponsor standards. You, for example, can also use for your standards, sponsor standards, you can have your old metadata repository and can import and export. The application, the OpenStudyBuilder application is the top part here, is also just connected through this API. The Word add-in will come soon, hopefully. And then we also have meant to connect to EDC systems, to any other cool tools, like also the statistical computing environment. We have an export to the USDM format planned. So the latest version is in development. And really what we also would like to see is having the OAK metadata, Admiral metadata, and so on. So this is what we can imagine will be located in our metadata repository. So let's concretely look into the metadata repository items, what you typically have in your metadata repository and what the OpenStudyBuilder already has. So we do have, of course, version control, a change management and traceability. So you can see who has changed what when. You see the old version and the new version. There is no deletion. It's just that the link might go to a newer version and the old version will always stay available. So you always can follow what was active when and what has been used for what studies. Very important is the CDIS control terminology. Apart from this, we also have a lot of sponsor-specific control terminology. An interesting part of the OpenStudyBuilder is that we are also standardizing a lot of things from the protocol, so objectives and endpoints, and also the control terminology for this. We support also dictionaries. There's also a unit table available, which is just there. But if you look for full SDTM specifications or full ADAM specifications, that's, as mentioned already, a missing part. So for the version control, we have draft, final, retired. We have versions for all elements, including timestamps. We have also for the CDIS control terminology, sponsor extensions. So we can have, for example, alternative labels. So instead of Y, we can use yes, and instead of N, we can use no. And we also have sponsor control terminologies. An example you can see here. So we do have a library, a title, an order, submission value, a version, and so on. For version control, you can also see it, what's the history, what changed when where, and you can see the version and you can see the different definitions and who did it. In this case, it was the test user here. Traceability, who changed what. In our sandbox environment, our initial script is running with the unknown user. So this first version was created by our autoload script, and then I performed some changes. And here you can see I made the version final, and for this we switched from 1.0 to 2.0. So the traceability is also available. For SDTM and ADAM specifications, as they are also very important for the metadata repository, it's not available as a whole. We have read in the CDIS implementation guides. We also have the opportunity to load sponsor data standards. This you can also see in our GitLab database. It's currently an undocumented feature, and it's currently only visible in the database itself. And we also have an API endpoints for these things. but we currently don't have it visible in the web interface. So it's a little bit hidden and a little bit undocumented, but we already do have something. We have the activities as concepts. So the activities are the most important things for our study planning. So which kind of tests do we plan for what visits? And here we already have parts of the ADAM definition, like the param CD codes. And also for the CRF design, we also have the SDTM definitions, but it's not fully linked yet. This is currently work in progress. So how does it look like? At least the implementation guide is already visualized in our application, so in the web interface. You can see it in the library part under data exchange standards for SDTM. And very similar, it might be that we can display also the sponsor-specific definitions then somewhere in the future, but this is currently not implemented. This is also just an example how the sponsor model can look like. We do have in the API different endpoints. You can see in GitLab the different CSV files, which contains the content which is loaded to in our example data. So for example, you can also include sponsor-specific domains, sponsor-specific variables, and so on. So nevertheless, the focus for Novo Nordisk is really the CRF and EDC part next. So if you would like to have a priority on other parts, for example, the SDTM mapping, like in the OAK initiative, or also the ADAM inclusion, this is where you come in. So we have here really the opportunity for collaborations. We really have lately a very high interest in utilizing the OpenStudyBuilder as metadata repository. And we are here to support the community, so also support you in building up this collaboration group, support with the planning and the execution. We have various pharma companies, we have vendors and CROs who would like to support this process. And we also have single consultants who are really interested in utilizing the OpenStudyBuilder as metadata repository. So we really have a lot of interest. We do have people who are interested in, so we really can go forward with collaborations. So how could it look like with the collaborations? Currently, all implementations are only done by Novo Nordisk. And as mentioned, we are working front to end. And many processes are not visible. So there's a lot of planning processes. There's the implementation, of course, but there's also very excessive testing done inside Novo Nordisk. So what we could do for collaborations, we can integrate collaborators in the current teams and processes. This would really enable that we also can stick with complete pipelines. So you can really send people, development people, planning people, feedback people, testing people to the OpenStudyBuilder team, and that they can fulfill whatever requirements you have. You can also utilize partners. So for example, Neo4j is a strong partner for the OpenStudyBuilder team. But we also are working with many other external developers, for example. So you can also, if you don't have own developers, you can bring into the team. You can also just utilize other partners. An alternative would, of course, be code contributions and side projects. When we do code contributions, there's a lot of planning needed. So how do we enable the code contribution? How do we handle the the pull requests? How do we implement testing activities and so on? We are working on how to enable code contribution. So code contribution very likely will come this year that we open up. If we do have concrete projects, like for example, from the OAK initiative, this is really where we can now talk here how we would do it. So the full integration option is that we're really having the Novo Nordisk team with their requirements, and then you can bring additional collaborators with your requirements into the team so that we can develop a harmonized solution which supports very different requirements. We can also have side-by-side implementations, so you can implement your specific stuff in your version, so you make updates here and updates there. Here it's really a little bit tricky with the integrations, but also this we can discuss how we can make it easier to integrate one and the other. Something I just want to point out, sometimes it's better to implement, for example, a new kind of configuration. So for example, it would be much more better to implement, for example, a style configuration in the original solution. Then you can have your private configuration, for example, make it green, meaning that your complete application looks the way you want to have it, but it's still one application and not two different tools. If you would, for example, implement the style, so the colors in your instance of the OpenStudyBuilder, you will have a GPL license, so it's still an open source tool. You don't have to share it in the internet, but you have to share it with your users, so it's a little bit more tricky and a little bit more open. But the result would be the same. So the question really is, could we update the OpenStudyBuilder to run with configurations, or do we really want to do code changes? The same is for APIs. I mean, that you could do generic API updates, like the support of customer attributes, whatever it is. So if you have some generic functionality, you could very generically still utilize the original software and the original API without the need to do adoptions. But of course, you also can just copy over the API, make some code changes to do some very specific stuff on your side, but this will then be still open source, meaning GPL. What you also can do is plugins or extensions. For example, for the API, we do have the OpenStudyBuilder API, which is open source. And you can do another API, which is also connecting to the database. It's just another complete own package, and this could be private. That's totally fine. If you don't integrate it, that's totally fine. It's two different things. So plugins and extensions is also a very great way to enhance the functionality of the OpenStudyBuilder. The last example I want to come up with is the database itself. So for example, if you're looking into the ADAM and SDTM specifications, we do have the OpenStudyBuilder, which is a graph database, and we might have content like this. And you would have to have extensions like on the right-hand side. And just by the definition that it's the same, you can just put it all in one database. And then you can have still the OpenStudyBuilder API working with the original dots and have extensions, a collaborative or private API, which where you get all the other definitions. So for collaborations, what we could do, we could work on a harmonized solution. We can work on divergent solutions, and we can also have plugins and extensions like single standalone apps. The question is, what do we want to have? What do you need? Like custom attributes, complex additional data. Maybe we also have a different context, like when we are working with Oak, which have a specific planning for mapping, or we have a linked mapping for SDTM. And really, how do we want to collaborate? We as OpenStudyBuilder community, we can support your steps. We can do bi-weekly or monthly meetings, which are also recorded. We can use these meetings for knowledge sharing, for harmonizing and coordination. We can also use it to collect the requirements and needs and also provide regular updates. There's also the opportunity to meet our team live at the CDISC Interchange in Berlin, which is on the CDISC interchange. If you have the opportunity to come around, please let me know, because then I need to plan the persons who are coming. But really how we go forward, what we do as a collaboration group, this is up to you, because if there are no collaborators, it will still be done all by Novo Nordisk, but then it will really take time till whatever you need will be implemented. And maybe your requirements are never implemented because you do have, for example, the need of specific additional attributes, which is not in scope for Novo Nordisk, for example. With this, I would like to start the discussions. So if you are willing to collaborate, and also you can mention what you would like to have. We can have tech share meetings. Would you more consider the collaborative approach or really have single solutions? This is what we can now talk about.
I would have a question, and probably we touched that already before in some of the former meetings where we attended. I would be interested in, I mean, you talked about the end-to-end approach of OpenStudyBuilder. At the same time, we are aware it's a modular approach. So what do you expect collaboration partners or the industry in general would make use of OpenStudyBuilder? Is it like more this end-to-end approach where I think we all agree it's really difficult to exchange existing vast landscape in pharma companies by an end-to-end system, because it would touch like the whole pipeline where many functions are involved and many interests are involved. So it would be a very complex process to envision that. Or would you say you expect more that companies would pick out a module, a single piece, like, for example, the MDR alone, and make use of this great API functionality OpenStudyBuilder offers? And that is, if I understand correctly, that's a great opportunity to implement this in every landscape, yeah, no matter where, because you have this flexible API and therefore flexible modularity. So would you expect that companies would apply that more in a modular approach or really in this end-to-end approach?
So for the beginning, I would expect that customers are using it more in the modular approach. So really just picking out what they currently need. So I mean, for this collaboration group, it's really focusing on the metadata repository. And we do see that, I mean, you need to manage your control terminology, your sponsor-specific controlled, your sponsors terminology, the dictionaries and all with version control and so on. I would see this as a starting point. Some other companies, it's really depending on where you see the highest gap. For example, some people see the gap more on the protocol area. So they are happy with their metadata repositories. They just want to automate their protocol. And then they will just focus on this first. But the more the OpenStudyBuilder is used, and this also comes with connectivities, meaning, for example, for the EDC system, we will see soon that Oracle will support the OpenStudyBuilder. We will very likely see that Viva will support the OpenStudyBuilder. We have smaller EDC systems like Marvin supporting the OpenStudyBuilder, and also the SCE connecting to OpenStudyBuilder. The more also options we have available, the more benefits I'm pretty sure will be seen by the vendors, so by the pharmaceutical industry. And so it will enlarge the focus. But still, if there's something better, you don't need to use the complete pipeline. If you have great processes for your protocol generation, you don't need to use this part. And there could be other software just having it exchanged. And this is the main great thing for these APIs. By having at least the opportunity also to get all the data out and get all the data in, you really can choose the best tool for your specific requirement.
Okay, thank you very much.
And maybe I can just supplement that you can say we have the same headache here at Novo Nordisk. How do we replace our existing MDR solutions and various tools with what internally we could just call the StudyBuilder? It's similar to OpenStudyBuilder. And the way to do it is to do it module by module. And for some of these components, we will have two ways of operation in parallel for some time. So it will not be a hard switch. It will be that some studies start up in the new OpenStudyBuilder, then others are running in the old, and some of it we synchronize back to the legacy MDR. So we simply need to, in some cases, run multiple systems at the same time, because in a way, the time where you did a big bang and say from this date, now you replace it hard, it's not working. So we will do a gradual transition, and that is giving the headache of running some systems at the same time with some synchronization in the background. But that is also a possibility. So for instance, we are maintaining terminology both in our legacy MDR and in the new OpenStudyBuilder, and then we're synchronizing the values between the two systems for a period of time until we can stop, you can say, maintaining content in legacy, but the legacy system will stay for some time until we can switch it off.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a whole headache around how to plan a transition.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Dimitri.
Oh, yes. Hi, that's a great presentation. And I actually have two questions. One of them I already asked and Mikkel has answered it. At least I will read about activity concepts. And I have another question. You showed how you can version control code lists or control terminology to be specific, or also you showed the standards represented in OpenStudyBuilder, which is amazing. I wanted to ask, and I now realize that this is also connected to what Mikkel just said. We have CDISC, we have CDISC library, where we have like the source of all standards. Do you envision that it will be also like a source of your control terminology in the OpenStudyBuilder, or actually it will be still like a copy of this in the OpenStudyBuilder so that it can be later managed in the OpenStudyBuilder? So to rephrase my question, do you see CDISC library as an initial starting point, an MDR on top of which you will build OpenStudyBuilder, or OpenStudyBuilder will actually still contain all of the metadata?
I mean, currently we still load the complete CDISC terminology into our metadata repository, which also makes the querying a little easier, because otherwise you would always have to query the CDISC API. What we also envision with respect to CDISC is that we do have sponsor-specific code lists, and we probably might agree industry-wide that this might be a good idea to have these sponsor-specific or some sponsor-specific code lists also in CDISC control terminology. So one idea is to have an interface in the OpenStudyBuilder that you can submit your control terminology to CDISC, so they can decide whether they would like to include it or not. Yeah.
Maybe I can supplement. So actually the OpenStudyBuilder is a repository, and it's made so it can import standards from the CDISC library. So all control terminology is coming in, and we have the part one of loading in data exchange standards. For the control terminology, we then have the opportunity to define sponsor preferred names, i.e. synonyms, for how those are to be represented in our protocols in CF. Because one of the problems with CDISC control terminology is it is US spelling, typically uppercased, and typically not using abbreviations that we commonly use. So we do our sponsor preferred names or synonyms in UK spelling. We use common abbreviations, and we typically also very often make them more, you can say, shorter, where many of the terminologies have a lot of extensions to it, so that we don't include, because we actually like to use the CDISC control terminology references from the protocol, but that has to be in the context of how you write in the protocol and in CF. For the data exchange standards, you can say the basic implementation guides, for instance, for SDM is rolling in, but we do a lot of customizations. We add a lot of standard variables in the various domains, and we add also sponsor-defined domains. All of that work you do within the MDR solution. So the CDISC library is only giving you the first part. All the sponsor extensions, the sponsor preferred synonyms, is actually what you do within your MDR solution.
Yeah. So Panikos?
Yes, I gotcha. So a little of what I'm gonna ask and say maybe links to how we perceive some of the previous questions as well, right? So if you look at the different collaboration models, almost the first one, where it's very centralized, speaks to the fact that different partners would maybe have different priorities that they want to influence, and so getting all those people part of one delivery agile process managed by Novo sounds to me like an extremely difficult to do well, especially if you've got a large number of partners. So the second one, where we've got a more distributed form of contribution and then merge it back in, with its own unique set of challenges that will have, is perhaps one that we might want to give more consideration on, because exactly like you said, you have vendors, CROs, and other pharma. We're already hearing from the questions, that we have different priorities. So for me, you guys are bringing a really good foundation, whether that comes in the database, whether that comes, from creating some of the core standards and tying into CITES 360 and to, DDF, USDM. So you're bringing the foundation for us to extend, but how we do it in a way that, lines up across all potential partners, I think, it's something we need to spend a bit more time talking about. I'm a fan, and I'm hoping for this kind of collaboration. And just to say thank you that you guys progressed and are willing to share like this. But for me, getting that model right is part of the success of a collaboration like this working.
Yeah, specifically for the collaborations, but this is for what I would like to use this collaboration group. There's a lot of discussions we should take. For example, code contributions in the central repository might be good, but then these needs to be managed really well, and all the testing pipelines are within the Novo Nordisk space. So there we are doing all the tests, and when all the tests are running fine, we push it to public. But then if we push something from Novo to public and something from Pharma 1 to public, and then the test, there's probably not any tests run from Pharma 1, so how to implement the tests and maintain the tests. It's a lot of questions which are open, and for this I really hope to set up a collaboration group. And also for this collaboration group, it's very important to have active participants, because I'm representing the, of course, the Novo Nordisk interests, but the Novo Nordisk interest in opening up for collaborations. So we really need additional collaborators giving concrete ideas, but also implementations, right?
And I can supplement. We are fully aware at Novo Nordisk that this is a challenge and we need to find a way to overcome it. And we don't have the solution right now. But we also know that if we don't open up, there's a high risk that our project will become yet another custom project at Novo Nordisk that in 5-8 years' time needs to be replaced. So for us at Novo Nordisk, doing the external collaboration, working with all of you, is the most important risk mitigation for us in actually ending up with an industry solution in the future and not yet another MDR project that has to be replaced. So we see this as really important for ourselves to open up. And we don't know exactly how, but part of what we don't share at the moment, for instance, is all our test cases and our user requirement and functional requirement. Because it's a lot of work in progress also, but just sharing the actual requirement specifications and the test cases around this will actually be an important step, because any of you that will work on this on any other pharma company will have to do the same. So I really hope, like Katja said, that this forum here could be a forum. How can we find the way together? How can you also help us to understand what the logical next steps is in doing these collaborations? Because we truly believe these collaborations will help us as an industry moving forward. And as actually, it's important for Novo Nordisk that we end up with an industry solution.
Yeah, maybe also some comments. So I have shared a whiteboard, which is an anonymous whiteboard, so you can join also with a guest account. And here on the whiteboard, you really also can note down what suggestions do you have, what are your preferences. You can put in your name before, you don't have to. So this is really, for example, what concrete questions do you have? What concrete kind of presentations you would like to see? What concrete things can you share? For example, other companies are also doing things with linked data. For example, Alexei from GSK is they are using a graph concept for mapping things. And he also suggested to present this approach. He will also do it on the EU interchange in the Fuse EU Connect in November. So you also can share these ideas and concepts in this collaboration group. So also to get additional inputs. So please feel free to include any kind of ideas, suggestions, what we could handle in this collaboration group in this whiteboard. Yeah, but we also can continue to discuss. So if we get feedback here that, yes, go forward, let's go forward with this MDR collaboration group, then the next step really is, okay, what concrete should we do, for example, the next meeting? Do you would like to see more demonstration of the concrete MDR content? Or do you want to discuss the collaboration options and the challenges? I mean, you're also noting down the challenges we have is the initial point to discuss how we can go forward.
I mean, even high level, just to know the use cases or business cases that people feel are not being captured by you guys, and they would want as a first step, might be a good next step. Even though high level, I think it might be a good next step. So we at least understand what the delta is between where you guys are headed in terms of your immediate roadmap and where other potential collaborators would want to head. And then maybe a list of concerns or blockers, right? The GPL3 licensing might be a restriction. I think you tried to address it a bit in the slides. Some of these companies will be investing money, and not everybody necessarily has the same approach to open source. And so understanding and being able to represent back to their own internal stakeholders how that would work. That's one potential area. So use cases, blockers, kind of even aggregating that at very high level between a group like this, for me, sounds an interesting next step.
Yeah, definitely. So Sam is also asking in the chat whether there's a Docker image or a virtual machine. So the OpenStudyBuilder can be pulled up as a Docker environment. So when you follow the instructions on the README file in the GitHub or GitLab, then a complete Docker environment is starting and can be used to play around. And the easiest way to play around just with a solution is to request access via email. And then we do have a sandbox environment, and then you just already can play around, and you can play around with all tools. So we do have a graphical user interface for the web application itself. We also do have a dashboard, which is, for example, very well available for browsing the activity concepts. We can also connect to the database itself and perform some Neo4j queries or Cypher queries. That's also all available via Sandbox. Yeah. So what I would like you to do, I hope you really would like also to go forward with this collaboration group. Please provide your ideas and suggestions in the whiteboard. You can also directly reach out to me either through Slack or through LinkedIn, or we also have our openstudybuilder@gmail.com email address. So we can plan the next steps. So any final words?
And maybe here some example of features that are missing or misdeveloped could be a nice return from all of you, because of course, as we mentioned, we are not fully sure that we have developed the OpenStudyBuilder the best way. So we are actually completely sure that we have not made it the best way. So, and the whole idea is that you don't do a project like this, then it's dusted and done, and then you share it. to get this to work, you have to share it while you build it. So the feedback from all of you is really appreciated and welcomed. And this will be something that we work on for years. And we need to do improvements and extensions and refinement. So all feedback is really, really welcome, one way or the other.
And that's one question, Mikkel and Katja. So, we're preparing for the cities interchange in Berlin, right? So the feedback we're collecting there during the workshop, are we planning also to share this with this work group?
Yes. So
Okay.
so all of our upcoming events is listed under events on our GitLab site. And then when we go under past event, we will share the material from the meetings. And when it's the workshop, we share the presentations from the workshop and the notes and the outcome of the workshop. So if it's not possible for you to attend the workshop in Berlin, the 23rd of April, we will then, after the event, share all the slide presentations and the notes and outcome of the meeting. So that becomes publicly available.
So the GitLab is then the repository for all of the
yes,
of the questions, findings, and
that we also did from the
project
workshop we did last. Yeah, we did the same from the CUSA workshop we did last year, where we did it in the US and we did it in Copenhagen. And if Sam Hume supports us, we will also like to do a follow-up CUSA workshop on the US interchange, and I see some of you are in the US, so you could also give ideas. If we do a OpenStudyBuilder CUSA workshop at the US interchange, what should it focus on? What could be interesting to dive in? Because I think these workshops where you go together at a face-to-face meeting a full day is really great to do ideation and where are we and have deeper discussions and so on.
Thank you, Mikkel.
So with this, thanks for joining this meeting. And I hope I will see at least some of you in the follow-up meetings.
And I hope to see some of you from Lille.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a
Bye.
lot. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.